I'd like to talk to you about Namakavya. Before I do that, I have a paradox for you. I'm a physician. I work in a home hospice team. The team and I treat about 2,000 patients a year. We have a 100% death rate amongst our patients, but almost 100% satisfaction from them and their families. Is there such a thing as a good death for somebody you love and care for? And here's a newsflash. Folks, you will die. Hopefully not during this talk, but you will die. It's the one thing we know for certain. There's no way escaping it. But it's not all bad news. It's not, because the majority of us will be aware of the fact that the end of our life is nearing. Because probably we will not die from sudden death, but rather from a slowly progressive chronic illness. It's a good thing to know that the end of your life is nearing, because it allows you the huge privilege of closing circles, of coming to terms with your own death, of telling people around you that you love and care, thank you, I love you, you meant everything to me. Or, I'm really angry at you, let's talk about it before I'm gone, it's important for me. The ability to do so is a huge source of self-meaning and worth, which allows people to die healed, if not cured, leaving friends and families sad, but much stronger. In short, allowing for a good death. I want to let you in on two of the medical world's less spoken about truths, definitely tonight. Despite all the efforts put in, all the funds spent, and all the amazing technologies developed, unfortunately, we're still at large losing the war to advanced case cancers. Not only that, it's not just cancer. Patients with very advanced cases of end organ failure, like heart failure or lung failure, have a life expectancy similar to patients with the most aggressive cancers. We don't tell that to our terminally ill patients when they come to make crucial decisions about their own treatments. We are rarely honest enough with our patients to tell them that in a lot of the cases, the price they're paying for the treatments is a lot higher than anything they'll ever gain from it. We don't do it because we're so overwhelmed with the need to offer our patients to do something that we forget that sometimes the best option is to shift from doing to being, is to leave the world of medical examinations and tests and hospitalizations and re-enter the world of families and communities and fulfilling last wishes. I often find myself telling patients, terminally ill patients, in my palliative care clinic at the hospital, I tell them, go home. I tell their families, take him home. There's got to be something else better that you can do with your time than spend it here and now. It's thanks to giants like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross that talking about death and dying are not only legitimate issues, it is our obligation to do so with our patients. Healthcare providers talking to their patients only about chemotherapy and radiotherapy and surgery are possibly depriving their patients of the right to die healed. It's thanks to another giant, Dame Cicely Saunders, that a new field in medicine has evolved in the last few decades, and it's called Palliative Medicine. I entered the world of palliative medicine many years ago as a young family physician. I had a patient, Ruth. Ruth was at the time 53 years old, a nurse, divorced, 2 children, and she was diagnosed a few months earlier as having a very advanced case of pancreatic cancer. Knowing how aggressive this cancer was, she decided not to undergo any medical treatments. A few months down the road, in one of our meetings, Ruth looked very, very ill. And I asked her, tell me, how are you coping? How are you doing? And she looked at me with amazing eyes of deep blue and jaundice yellow and told me, Ron, I'm having the best time of my life. I had no idea how many good friends I have, and they're all taking such amazing care of me. I'm like a princess. Everything I ask for is being done. My wish is my command. People listen to what I have to say. Even my ex came back to treat me. But above all, I rediscovered my children. I found out that my children have grown up to be smart, beautiful, intelligent, loving, compassionate, giving young adults. They're everything I'd hoped them to be. And had it not for the illness, I would have probably not have noticed that. So I look at this time as a gift that I got. This short conversation with Ruth made me realize that there's a whole different perspective to end of life that I was completely unaware of, that nobody had ever told me anything about it in medical school. I know that talking about death and dying is very difficult for a lot of healthcare professionals. So I want to offer them a small gift. It's a tool that we've developed, and we call it the 3 Tell Me questions. Tell me what you know about your condition. Tell me what's the one thing you're very afraid of, and tell me what would make you happy now. They're called Tell Me questions because we're not interested in a simple yes-no answer, and they're definitely not simple WH questions. It's a story we're interested in, and patients have stories. Tell me what you understand about your condition. And when you ask this to a terminally ill patient in the room, with there are other people in the room present, people who love and care for this patient, you'd be surprised how many times this is the first time they realize this patient knows everything about his condition. And he also knows he's dying. Studies have shown that even terminally ill 3-year-old children know that they're going to die. Their entire behavior changes towards the end of life. Tell me what you're most afraid of. And not as expected, the answer is not the fear of death. These are people who have been sick for a long time. Death is not an issue. They're afraid of suffering, of being in pain, of being a burden on other people, and of being alone when the time comes. Tell me what would make you happy. And sometimes when you ask patients this question, you see a small, what we call a recognition smile. They go, And you know they're thinking, well, being healthy would make me happy. But they don't say it. Rather, they answer doable, tangible things. For example, making it to my grandson's wedding. Seeing the house I helped design a few years ago and I think is a masterpiece. Going to the sea for the last time. Or talking to my sister whom I haven't spoken to in 30 years. It's really important to me. They're all doable, tangible, executable things if asked at the right time, if given enough chance. It teaches us that today we're all so obsessed about finding solutions to questions that terminally ill patients are not concerned about. They're not concerned about issues of longevity and survival, but rather on issues of their quality of life, the comfort of their life, and the quality of their own death. Now, I'm a true believer in options, and I believe people should have the option of receiving excellent palliative care at the end of life in hospitals, but also in the comfort of their own homes. It wasn't long ago that death was considered to be an acceptable consequence of life, and people mainly died in the place where they lived, in their own homes. It's just in the last 100 years or so that death became an unacceptable consequence. It just shouldn't happen anymore. And for the few people escaping immortality, the most common place of death became a hospital or an institution. The paradox is that today, as opposed to 100 years ago, we have the medical technology and abilities to essentially eliminate suffering at the end of life. So now, more than ever, people should have the right to end their lives where people have been doing so since the beginning of humankind, in the comfort of their own homes. To have this option, not just theoretical, not just on paper, but true option, to offer, for example, an end-stage ALS patient, an end-stage heart failure patient, an end-stage dementia patient, definitely cancer patients, to offer them true comfort at the end of life, we need to make sure we have an able, capable, equipped palliative team on call 24/7, 365 nationwide. There is no room for mistake. You cannot just not appear at the last hours. It's not an option. Now, I know that to have excellent palliative care in the community poses huge challenges, but I also know that it's a win-win-win-win-win situation. It's winning for patients, for their families, for healthcare providers, for communities, and for healthcare policymakers. It's winning for patients because it's their way that is being respected. It's their wishes that are being met. It's winning for their families because it's so much easier to take care of somebody you love when you know you're doing what they wanted you to do. And it also makes the bereavement period after death much more at peace. It's winning for healthcare providers because it's a whole other set of toolkits that we have in our medical toolbox. It's winning for communities because this is the time when communities can come together and reassert their importance. We all know exactly what to do when a new child enters this world. But a lot of us are baffled and confused when a child of this world leaves us. And palliative medicine is a win situation for policymakers because it's a rare example in medicine where the best medicine is also the least expensive. Huge funds can be shifted from unnecessary tests and imaging and treatments to places where these funds are needed elsewhere in the medical world, and they're always needed somewhere else. Now I want to tell you about Naama Akavya. Naama is my patient X. She's the one patient I will never forget for the rest of my life. I met Naama for the first time about 7 years ago. She was at the time a 32 years old, brilliant young woman. She was diagnosed about a year earlier with having an advanced case of colon cancer. The first time we met was in a dark, quiet hospital room. Her entire family was sitting around her. And Naama looked at me and said, "I want to die. Help me die. I used to dance. I can't do that anymore. I used to do academic work, and I can't do that anymore. There's just no point." It turns out that she had woken up for an emergency surgery a few hours earlier because of bowel obstruction from the tumor. They essentially opened her up and closed her right back because there was nothing operable they could offer her. So I did the only thing I could do at that particular moment, and that is ask her the 3 tell me questions. Tell me what you know about your condition. As expected, Naama knew everything about her condition. Tell me what you're most afraid of. And again, as expected, she didn't want to suffer anymore. I asked her, tell me what would make you happy now. And she thought for a second and said, I'd like to finish my PhD. And it turned out that Naama was really close to finishing her brilliant dissertation at UCLA on the work of the famous psychiatrist, Dr. Rorschach. The thought that her work will not be published, and to a sense, her life would have been in vain, was the source of her #1 pain, her existential pain. So I promised Naama we'd do our best. And we took her home, and with a few tricks we have up our palliative sleeve, and with a lot of effort from her family, and definitely from Naama, we managed to give her a few good hours every day for a few weeks, enough for her to finish her work. And a few weeks later, when the letter from UCLA arrived, acknowledging her new title, Dr. Naama Akavya, PhD, she could let go. She had made her dent in the academic cosmos forever. Naama died a few days later, in her own bed, surrounded by friends and families, with her favorite classical music in the background. This is what I call dying healed. Thank you.